We'll chat about it. Welcome back to A Celtic State of Mind. I'm Paul John Dykes. This Friday afternoon, I'm joined by Quinny, Jim Orr, Colin Watt. It's a biggie. It's a full house. And I mean, I know half of us will be in Gracie's tonight to watch Brian McClare and Peter Grant talking all things Celtic. Interesting times in the 1980s, Jim. Beyond all the struggles near the end of the decade, it's almost a decade of missed opportunity, Jim. You were obviously a match-going fan back in the day. A lot of missed opportunities back in the 80s.
Yeah, I think you can trace it back to Rapid Vienna. If we were to get through that, then there was every chance we could have won the Cup Winners' Cup that year. Yeah. Obviously, they got to the final. We didn't. So and things went downhill for a couple of seasons. Then we managed to win the league Love Street, which is good. And then the old board didn't invest. Lost the league to Souness, got the league back, and then the rest, as they say, is history. So, not a good history as well.
So much so, Jim, that people have written about it, people have made documentaries about it, and people have even made stage plays about it, Quinny. If you know the history.
Yesterday, just confirmed yesterday, bringing it back next year to the Pavilion. So that's my latest news next year.
Brilliant.
The history at the Pavilion. So no doubt, lots of shameless plugs will be coming soon. So.
And that was a seamless transition to a shameless plug. And I didn't even know, because I was trying to seamlessly transition into talking about someone, a figure in Scottish football, Colin, who is much derided, and quite rightly so, has broken his 14-year silence to blame everybody else about the downfall of Rangers. That's exactly what we would expect. Sorry?
Philip Sebo's had an interview.
Sebo indeed. Yeah, interestingly enough, Sir David Murray, he's still got the knighthood. Who would want one of them? But he's still got the ability and the freedom to walk back into Scottish football today if he so desired. There was no sanctions placed against his name, Colin. And he comes out and blames everybody else. Peter Lawwell wanted to bury Rangers, apparently. You seen any of this interview?
I've seen parts of it. The one part I did see is that he wined and dined Peter Lawwell at Ibrox beforehand, before Lawwell had the Celtic job. Do you know what? He lost a fortune. This is his way. He thinks he's going to get it back. But I might actually purchase it. I like reading fantasy novels, and this is what this seems to be. So I might give it a wee purchase when it's in the bargain bin.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it'll end up in the bargain bin. Quinny, the reason I bring it up isn't because I'm obsessed. There was obviously far-reaching consequences of what they were all up to back in the 80s and the 1990s, moving into the 2000s. Obviously, they were liquidated as a result of that, but it did affect Scottish football. Scottish football, as a match-going, season ticket-holding fan, you might have felt cheated out of trophies, out of successes, because of the way that his football club did their business, Quinny.
Yeah, well, that's definitely the way it's getting remembered. I remember, watching all this unfold before your very eyes, as it were. And I didn't even know he did the interview. I've been kind of running around like a headless chicken for the last couple of days. So if there's an interview and some clips or whatever, I look forward to catching up with that later on. It should be...
Quinny, I'll give you a couple of guesses at who's interviewed him. And that tells you the standard of this book.
Right, who would you expect? No, Quinny doesn't know, right? So who would you expect to interview him, Quinny?
I actually wouldn't be able to guess, but I did see it in the chat earlier. So I think it's Ewan Cameron.
Yeah, that tells you everything you need to know.
Yeah.
Is Ewan Cameron such a bad guy, Colin? I think he winds a lot of people up deliberately, to be honest with you.
I'd imagine it's quite a soft soap interview. Sorry, Colin, jumped on that.
No.
This is the point. This is the point, Jim. Absolutely.
He's quite a controversial character, and he puts statements out to wind people up. So there's nothing that he says that you can take seriously. To the point of he turned around yesterday and said Hearts will win the league within 5 years.
That's what I'm talking about. That's tongue in cheek. That's just tongue in cheek.
Right. So, but if you're trying to sell your book, right? You've brought out your new book. So this is edit 2 of the Celtic jersey book.
What am I calling it? All right, the Celtic jersey. I thought it was my autobiography, because this book's called Metal.
Yeah, funny that.
Right. Okay, my autobiography. What's it called? What's it called, Colin? Come on.
I don't know. You're not going to turn to Ewan Cameron to do your one-on-one, this is your life interview thing. Of all people.
No, I would get Jim Orr to write my book. Anyway, I'm not quite sure. Comments, please. Let me know what the autobiography would be called. The filthier, the better.
I saw some quotes. I haven't seen it. I saw some quotes on Twitter. Someone said it was like Fred West blaming the gardener. which was quite a good quote somebody made. But the one thing I did see, and I wrote it down actually, he talked about Peter Law became a pivotal figure in trying to grind Rangers down and make them suffer. To me, it seemed the mantra was always, let's bury Rangers. That's a quote. They'd already died. You can't bury somebody twice, which was a bit bizarre. But you know that bit where, you get an individual, somebody who disrespects a team, disrespects a manager, and they say, we'll just pin that on the wall. That'll be their motivation. That should be pinned on the boardroom wall for Peter Law. What are you going to do about it? What are you going to do about it? Because, I think when I first appeared in Acsom, was that nearly 5 years ago now, something like that, I talked about there was 3 legacy issues that annoyed me still, which I thought had to be cleared up, and I think annoyed a lot of Celtic fans. First one was the boys' club scandal, and I think we've taken some steps to try and sort that out. Not enough, and it took us too long. The other one, which I think you alluded to earlier, was maybe the reassignment of the trophies won during 10 years of cheating by the body concerned, because unless somebody can tell me otherwise, I don't know of any other sporting event where somebody's found to be cheating and gets to keep the trophies. I don't understand that at all. It's like going, an example like back to the Olympics in 88, 100 metres men's, Ben Johnson wins it, Carl Lewis second, Ben Johnson took drugs, Ben Johnson disqualified over to Carl Lewis.
Yep.
If the SFA were in charge of that, they said, Ben, just keep it, mate. Just keep your gold medal, Ben. It doesn't matter. So somebody needs to sort that out. And I think the fact that this is now back in the open, it's now something to discuss. There's no better time than Peter Law or Celtic looking at this again, I think, to say, well, why haven't these titles been reassigned? And the third one was this 2011 when Rangers were out in the Champions League, when they owed money to the tax man. And that's never been properly investigated either, because the SFA seem to have done something they should not have done at the time. So I don't blame the SFA, I don't blame Rangers, I blame Celtic for not doing something about this, because you talked about, do you feel cheated playing into a rigged game? Yes, of course you feel cheated. What were the rules? They went against the rules. And the punishment is meant to be, if you play an unregistered player, then you're meant to have a 3-0 loss. So therefore, you have to recalculate all these leagues and you have to reassign those trophies. And the longer you don't do that, then the more the lie kicks in that they were won fairly and squarely, and they weren't. You can talk about winning on the field. They had contracts from the SFA.
Yeah.
So like Quinny, I'll look forward to watching this interview, because if you hide contracts from someone, straight away you're thinking, maybe that doesn't sound too clever. So that's what I'd like to. And I know people who don't go to Celtic Park because of these issues, because Celtic haven't addressed these issues, and they should address it. It doesn't. I mean, I know it may sound to some people like paranoid, obsessed Celtic fan, but we were cheated for the guts of 10 years with that. We were put into a rigged game, and they talk about Celtic fans being paranoid. We weren't paranoid enough at that time. So I'd like to see, because it was Fergus McCann, he just sorted that out day one. He come right in and said, right, here we go. This is what. And the thing about the SFA and the fact that clubs, their participation in that Champions League lost us tens of millions of pounds potentially, lost other teams money. Not that you can sue because that club doesn't exist. So you can't. So it's not a monetary thing. It's about righting the wrongs of the past. It's about doing something. And I think it's incumbent in the Celtic board on behalf of the Celtic fans to get those trophies reassigned.
Jim,
early rant. Sorry, was that 12:39?
Listen, I am delighted that you said it, because you and I have spoken about this in the 5 years that you've been contributing to Celtic State of Mind. And if I disagree with you, I would say so. I don't disagree with that. And I think that if you're going to pick the scab, if you're David Murray and you're picking the scab, then it is a great time, Quinny, to then say, well, you know what, you've brought it back into the open. You're trying to punt a book. You're obviously needing the dough. You need to sell a lot of copies for you to make any, right enough. And here we go. Let's take this to task then. Ewan Boy Martin comes in. See Murray talking through his backside again. Time to get the Strip the Titles campaign back on track. Why not? Why not? And it's Strip the Titles. And as you say, Jim, you can't chase anybody for lost revenue, because that club is dead. It was liquidated. You can't chase them for that. But what you can do is, in order to move on, Quinny, can Scottish football move on? Well, this stain exists on the past cheating endeavours of David Murray and co?
I think when it comes to like the competition integrity, and obviously talking about like the powers that be, the SFA itself, it's Jim brought up a good point of you see this happening anywhere else, that's what happens. And the first thing that sprang to my mind was like Italy, because the amount of teams that we've seen over there get relegated for cheating in different ways most of the time. And what happens with those leagues when that happens, titles are stripped, and it's not even necessarily like the reassignment thing or putting someone else's name. Like I kind of get that, obviously, just for like historical record, but it's more about you don't let the people that have cheated have the glory, have the honor of history, remembering them as being a successful team in that period. And I was going to mention it, when you kind of flipped it to me earlier, but I decided against it, so I don't remember all the details of it. But I remember watching a pretty good documentary type thing. It might have been on YouTube or something. It was called The Asterix Years, and it was kind of going through
Paul Larkin.
Yeah. It was going through all that kind of stuff, So I see it's not something I'm well across, but certainly you can't leave it written that, just as if it was a normal bunch of seasons or whatever, because hiding contracts, the players that they were able to bring in to win on the field, it's like if anyone done it now, the same things would happen. It would be cheating, and you'd be punished accordingly. And you shouldn't expect to hold on to the spoils of battle, as it were.
No, you're right. I've got that DVD actually behind me, the one you mentioned. It's viewable on YouTube, Quinny. And this is the thing, right? I don't expect. It's like when I was going back to the point Colin made about Ewan. That's what I expect from a Jampo. Absolutely. That's just football banter. It's crack. It's patter, right? I don't mind that in the slightest. And I wouldn't expect Rangers fans to admit that their team died and all this kind of stuff. And they keep holding on to that. And there was a tweet just last week, Joey Barton going on about returning to dominance. What are you talking about, returning to dominance, Joey? If you actually look at the historical records, you need to go some way back to return to dominance without cheating. But you let them do that because that's just football. But when it comes to the actual authorities within a football organisation, Colin, you would expect, as Jim says, for them to make sure that, full scrutiny is given to that period of time. I mean, off the top of my head, a wee bit like Quinny, I've not actually thought about it for a while. I'm not sure how many titles would be stripped, and I'm sure someone in the comments, don't know if Jim knows off the top of his head.
I think it's 5.
How many? I think it's 5 titles, so. Yeah. And it's not about bragging rights or any of that, because we're already ahead of the game if you're going to be counting trophies, Colin. Can Scottish football move on whilst this stain remains on the history of the game?
It already has, Paul. It's moved on.
Well, we're still talking about it, though.
But you guys are talking about it, though. Nobody at the top level's talking about it anymore. It's a fan thing. It's fan-led. And if fans want to talk about it, then there's platforms like this to do so. But at the higher levels, no one's talking about it now. You don't see it in the papers. You don't see it getting discussed. It was moved on from a long time ago. And unfortunately, with the current people that's in charge, that situation won't change. Scottish football has moved on.
Well, I don't think
it won't change because there's no great incentive for the current Celtic board to do anything about it. I mean, there's no mileage in it at all. It's the moral thing to do. And I'm not trying to kind of come over some sort of paranoid Celtic fans. 3 words. Apply the rules. That's it. Just apply the rules.
Yeah.
So if you apply the rules, then we'll just nod and say that's fine, but you're not applying the rules.
Yeah, Colin, you're right. There's no appetite from the Blazers in the boardrooms of Scottish football. You're right. You're absolutely right. They want to just move on and pretend it never happened.
There's fundamentally so much wrong about Scottish football, Paul. And for them to go back to that period, you'd be waiting well past my lifetime, probably past my future son's lifetime before they actually do stuff, because there's things where right now, league reconstruction, no interest in that. Fans have been demanding it for years. This discussion that we're having right now, fans have asked for the investigation into it. Nothing. As Jim said earlier, the boys' club scandal, there was asked for an investigation into that. Nothing. The SFA the governing bodies have the easiest job in Scottish football. They pick out 38 fixtures for each team each season, and they scramble together to get sponsorship for the leagues. And that's it. They care about nothing else. There's no compliance. The compliance officer comes out, dusts off his hat and looks at video every now and again. We've got pound shop VAR. We have no goal line technology at all. And there's no input on developing young Scottish players in this country. The SFA are completely inept, and yet the status quo remains.
15 minutes in, 2 rants. I'm wondering if we'll
I
ever
think
get a
so.
rant
I
from-
mean, just to
from
maybe
Quinny.
finish it. I mean, sorry, why you go, Quinny?
So Quinny's never ranted in all his time in Acsom. He's never ranted.
But on a
You
Friday,
guys,
it's like a tradition to.
you guys are winding it up. You're winding it up for a rant. For
We'll get
Quinny.
one out of him before the time's up.
Jim, you were
Also,
saying.
just to finish it, just to finish it. So, Colin's right. Nobody is talking about it, but why are we talking about it now? Because your man has brought it to the surface again.
Picked the scab, yeah.
He's picked a scab, and it's all over social media. And I would think, if I was Peter Law and somebody said to me he became a pivotal figure in trying to grind Rangers down and make them suffer, to me it seemed the mantra was always, let's bury Rangers. If I'm Peter Law, I think that's unfair. I don't want to comment on that. To say that's not what I was doing. What I was doing was this. So, and that's why I said that should be pinned on the boardroom wall. There's your incentive. If you ever want incentive, when you go. But as I said, if it was Fergus, wouldn't be talking about this. Wouldn't be talking about this at all. Been done, dusted a long time ago.
Absolutely. I'm just wondering about this boardroom now, Quinny. Did they do warm-ups? Did they do chin-ups and stuff like that, just whilst that's on the wall, just to get them a wee bit kind of sweated up? I'm not quite sure. I'm just visualising Brian Wilson doing that as we speak. I'm not quite sure because, Peter Law had a go at a Celtic fan in the AGM. Yeah, it was a wee bit defensive, I felt, Quinny. If he's going to do that, why not? Roll your sleeves up and have a go back. Mr. Murray.
I don't know. Celtic have been kind of funny when it comes to that kind of backroom, like soap opera kind of element, with like statements that get put out and, and official comms. So I don't know. I think the point stands. Like if he does feel that it's not an accurate representation of what he was actually up to, thinking or behaving like, then you would expect something. But I'm not sure it's really in the kind of the remit for what Celtic normally do with this kind of stuff. Often we kind of wait for statements or expect comms on a variety of things, and it's either bare minimum or it doesn't happen at all. So I could see them even just dinging it and just ignoring it.
Yeah, dinging it. I like that. Here we go. We've got some comments coming through, and we will move on to one of the points Colin made was about youth development in Scottish football. There's been a development in terms of Celtic this week. We'll be talking about that, and also the tagline we have announced more kits than players this season. We'll have a wee chat about that kit. I know Jim is dying to talk about it. Right, here we go. John, you're in. John Keenan, you're on the YouTube. If you're watching on YouTube, give us a thumbs up, like the video, and subscribe to the channel. Does not matter the price of the third kit. People will buy it regardless, I'm afraid. Okay, we are going to be chatting about this third kit, John. Absolutely. And we've got a lot of comments coming in. Donny, tiny hands, new jersey, looks like pajamas. It's dividing opinion, let's just say, Colin. We got a wee email this morning from the Celtic media team with 4 images, just the 4 images of this new kit. And I've looked at it. People who watch the show will know that I love football jerseys. I really do. I love the whole process of them. I would admit, I would accept I'm more of a traditionalist when it comes to the design of football jerseys, although I'm not opposed to trying things out a wee bit different. This is certainly different, Colin, is it not?
It is. And you know what? It plays to a certain market. And as much as the fans can say, oh, I'm not buying that, for everyone that says that, there's one that says, I love that, I'm going to buy it. And the response online, I think, is sort of age skewed. I think the older you are, the more you don't like it, to be fair. But we spoke about this a couple of weeks ago. Celtic's most popular home kit over the Adidas period was the one that everybody hated. The one, was it 2 seasons ago now?
Yeah, it was. It was.
Yeah, that outsold every other home kit that we've had, every other kit that we've had since we came in from Adidas. And my opinion is that this kit will do big numbers for Celtic. Maybe not domestically, but worldwide, this kit will do big numbers. The only thing I think about the kit is the green could be slightly darker, and I wish the design carried round the whole shirt. The back of the shirt just being plain white is a bit meh, but I actually genuinely don't mind it.
I'm going to leave Jim to last on this one so he can save up his rant, because I know he's so passionate. so passionate about the release of third jerseys. He's been waiting for this moment. And I'm going to come to you, Quinny. There's the jersey for anyone who hasn't seen it. This was the shot that we were sent this morning. Please comment about Yang's trousers. I don't know what's going on there, but we are focusing on the jerseys. And
He's sitting in a 1970s living room chair.
It's all about boogie nights. And these tops, it's just like, I don't know, it does have that faded pajama inside out top look about it, Quinny. It's almost as if they didn't want to truly commit to the idea that they had. I'm not a fan. But you know what? I think Colin said something interesting. That probably will do well globally. And I think maybe Adidas and the club are looking at just like, sales elsewhere, sales from people that aren't even Celtic supporters necessarily. It's an unusual one, and I'm not a fan at this moment in time. Quinny, what's your thoughts?
It's probably not one I'll pick up. I'm a big fan of like football, fashion football club, or whatever you want to think of it as. And I'm always quite interested in the special edition jerseys. I've sadly bought the last couple that didn't even make it to the pitch, just through, the Lisbon one being so good, and I think that I got the other one as a gift. But I don't think this will be one I pick up. I'll definitely be buying the shorts, but I don't know if you've got a picture of them.
The shorts.
I do like them. Yeah,
I'll definitely buy the shorts when they're like off-season, mid-season discount or whatever, Christmas discount, whatever they do with that. But my first thought when I seen this was it's a very computer game shirt. Like it's probably, like I say, we're saying generations and stuff like that, but it's very much like, it's not as much about it being a football shirt. It's about it being like a cool looking, different kind of football shirt with the kind of sound wave pattern and all that. Not too much of a fan of the orange. I think it gives it that kind of coleslaw vibe I've heard people say.
Yep.
It's a different color for the detail. Maybe would have changed it a bit. And I think the shamrock could have been a bit more kind of pronounced because it just kind of looks like a fan, on a line there, like a little air fan for the room, rather than a shamrock. So I don't really feel too much about it one way or the other, but I won't be buying it.
No, you're right. The Adidas logo, the Celtic clover, the alphabet, all kind of just blends in, doesn't it? Jim, we're obviously here to hear your thoughts about the chair and Yang's trousers. Once you've given us your thought about it, on you go, Jim.
Paul's obviously the jersey whisperer, so obviously I'm out of my league today, this kind of stuff. And King Colin said the older people are, the less like it. So I'm obviously at the end of that scale nearly. So I've said before, still love football. If it's become money's taken over, third kits, who cares?
There you go. There's a slogan. Yes.
There's a big sort of narrative I've seen, and I agree with a lot of people when they say this. Celtic bring out 3 kits every year. Mm-hmm. It's £70 or £75, whatever the kit is now. And you buy it for yourself, you buy it for your kids, whatever. And then there's training gear. And there was training gear launched today that was already announced last week. And there'll be more to come. And there's the away kit still to come. And people say, well, I'm spending this, well, I'm spending that, well, I'm spending the next thing. At least Adidas is giving some people the option that if they really don't like the kit, you don't need to buy it. Because you don't just buy T-shirts that you don't like just because they've got a Celtic top on them. This is your chance now. You don't need to be a slave to the man and pay the 75 quid. As Quinny says, wait till the sale comes on about this time next year. You'll pick it up for about 30 quid.
Yeah, you will. You absolutely will. Colin, I just, I think football jerseys...
We'll be a slave to the man. Brilliant comment.
The point I was making this morning, Jim, is that, the jersey whisper and all that, but if you release a Celtic jersey and that is worn in a competitive game, then you are writing Celtic history. Every single kick of the ball, every game is going to be documented. It's going to be looked back on. So, in effect, that jersey is entering Celtic folklore the moment that it's worn. So I think that there's something a bit different to a Celtic jersey that's going to be worn in a game compared to a leisure shirt or a polo shirt or a T-shirt or whatever, which I do believe could be throwaway and people will like them or not. But when it comes to a Celtic jersey, I just think it's a wee bit more sacred, Quinny. Are people going to say I'm a sado for thinking that? Probably.
No, not at all. I do think, see, one thing, we spoke about it, it wasn't on a stream, I forget where it was, but see, one thing I would like Celtic to try and look at in some regard, and it is to keep in more with the fan base, the origins of the club in some regard, with the price associated with strips and whatever. But if you look at like MLS only renew, like, see, every team, they only so they've got a home and an away kit, and then they, with their deals, they can make about 1,000 other kits for special occasions and whatever. But they only they rotate it. So their home shirts do 2 seasons and their away shirts do 2 seasons, and they only actually release one actual new like strip or whatever. And I love the hoops. Getting a new set of hoops every year is all right, but see if they told you the hoops were going to last over 2 years rather than one, I don't know if it would be that much of a real loss. I don't think they would dramatically sell less. I don't know. But like, I don't know. But with the amount of kits that are going around, that's one thing I think like is something that could be considered and would be something I think families and that's in the like would maybe welcome. You know,
I think the timing of this release is very interesting, Paul. It's the 27th of June today.
Yeah.
The accounts run up to the 30th of June.
Right.
Now, I'm not saying that they're going to bring in millions of pounds over the next 3 days in this with these shirts or with the training wear, but there's certainly something to be said about releasing 2 kits before the end of a season. And well, I say a season, a financial season.
Financial season, yeah. Right, the big question is, Colin, I mean, we've already discussed the David Murray revelations. He's trying to throw Peter Lawwell under the bus. What should Lawwell do? What will Lawwell do? That's a big question. Let us know in the comments. Also, let us know what you think of this new Celtic third kit. It's the third kit, isn't it, Colin? It's not the away kit's the black one with the lime green, yeah. So it's the third
I give one
kit.
last comment.
I know it's
jerseys.
one of your favourite subjects, Jim.
I know. Where I'm coming from is some of the most iconic games between, say, Celtic and Hibs from, say, the 70s. When Celtic play Hibs, they no longer play green and white hoops and green with white sleeves. That doesn't happen anymore. There's no games that happen like that. So those are iconic, I think. They're now lost because of money, because of merchandising, because whatever. Love football, hate what it's become. Mini rant, sorry.
That is a mantra. It used to be the battle of the Greens. You're absolutely right, Jim. The battle of the Greens. Jockstein used to talk about it as well. I can visualise the likes of the 6-1 game, the 6-3 game, big cup finals. And you're right, iconic moments in the history of Celtic. And I guess it is an age thing. It's a historical thing. I just think you put a Celtic jersey on, you're going to be photographs, you're going to be filmed, you're in the history books for all time. We need to be careful with what we put out there. That's just my take on it. But by the way, I've seen lots of positive comments. And let's be honest, guys, we're talking about it, even if it divides opinion. In fact, that's a marketing dream if it divides opinion, because it gets the traction and it probably gets the big sales as well, Colin. Let us know your thoughts in the comments, so we'll bring up as many as we possibly can. One final point on the David Murray nonsense was obviously the tie-in, this unofficial tie-in that Rangers had with Dunfermline back in the day as well, Dunfermline Athletic. Chris Sutton had a view on it, that's for sure. But when David Murray is offering the job of another fellow Premiership team to an individual, then you've got concerns that there's a bit of corruption taking place. And that's exactly what happened when Jimmy Calderwood got the job for Dunfermline. It was offered to him by David Murray. I mean, Quinny, you can't ignore that. That is, incestuous is what that is.
Yeah, it's definitely crossing a line, isn't it? There, I was kind of involved in some of the Dumbarton stuff last year, and kind of going back through the history of that. Something similar had happened in the lower levels between, I forget the guy's name, but there's a guy that had like his finger in like 3 different clubs in one way, shape, or form. And it's just not good crack. It doesn't go well. It never ends well, and it's always going to serve the interest of one over the other. And yeah, I didn't even know that, to be honest with you, until you just said that. So
yeah, it was an interesting one, and it goes a bit deeper, right? So there was that moment, and Calderwood spoke about it a number of times. I actually got him to open up about it prior to him appearing on Off the Ball, which I think was the one that got all the headlines. But our channel was so small at the time, nobody watched the video, but it's still on the channel. And Jimmy Calderwood actually spoke about the fact that David Murray offered him the job. He thought he was getting the Rangers job. He was offered a Dunfermline job with the promise that if you did well, you could be the manager at Rangers someday. That was his promise. He was a big Rangers fan. He took the job. But then you start looking at the different players that came into Dunfermline during Jimmy Calderwood's time there. And you've got Ian Ferguson, and you've got Nicholson, and Scott Wilson, David Graham. You've got so many, Greg Shields, loads and loads of business going from one club to the other. David Murray owned the Dunfermline club shop in the Kingsgate in Dunfermline. And then there was
Alan McGregor played for Dunfermline, didn't he?
McGregor, he was a loanee, stayed my street. Obviously, all the doors were locked during that period. And also, there was the Stadia group, the Stadia Group, which was Masterton's company, and him and David Murray were behind building stands for the likes, say, Dunfermline Athletic, Livingston, Motherwell and Dundee. What do they all have in common? They all went into administration. And then they were building up things like business alliances, like physiotherapies. So instead of buying or having one physiotherapy unit per club, they had one that was catering for all those clubs all at the same time, as well as catering, as well as scouting. And the scouting in question is why Graham Souness was paid an EBT. And this is the big thing, right? So Graham Souness is paid an EBT, right, for scouting, whilst he's a manager of an English football club. And the other two non-declared EBT recipients, as per the Mac Daly expose, there was two undeclared recipients. Who do you think those guys were? All you'd need to do is ask yourself who the other scouts were for the Stadia Group. Who was looking after England? Graham Souness. Who was looking after Scotland? And who was looking after the North of Ireland? Because the Scottish scout and the North of Ireland scout, were they paid EBTs? I'll just throw that out there. Are they still involved in football? These are the big questions that, you know, if you want to pick the scab, I think we should go deep. I think we should go into this situation and name and shame. So there we go.
100%. 100%.
Yeah.
Not paranoid.
Sorry to interrupt you, Paul, but I think we've got some breaking news.
Here we go. I like Colin. Colin is the ticker tape. He tells us when there's breaking news. Let's go.
Great breaking news. It looks as if Celtic are just about to announce the signing of Benjamin Negren. They have posted a tweet in the last few minutes. And as we confirmed on the show last Friday, the deal's been done for a while now. There was pictures of Negren arriving in Glasgow yesterday. He did his medical last week, as far as I'm aware. So a great addition to the side. And finally now we've signed more players than kit's released. There you go.
There you go. It's definitely a reaction to our tagline. There's no doubt about that. Will he be unveiled wearing the new third kit though, Colin? That's a big question.
Doubt it. As far as I'm led to believe, Osmond from Fulham will also be announced in the next few days as well. So it's good moves all round.
I want them both in the third kit, standing in the tunnel, reenacting that signing photograph of Andy Payton, Stuart Slater and Rudy Vata. And the reason I say that, Quinny, I don't know if you've had time, you're a busy man. Have you watched the Andy Payton interview with Frank McAvenny?
No, I've not caught that one.
Go and have a watch. I mean, he was a guy, obviously, Jim, you've probably seen every game he played for Celtic, Andy Payton.
No,
but he was a guy... Oh, was that during your boycott stage? Dearie me. When you were boycotting Celtic, Jim, did you go anywhere else? Did you go to another game of football?
No, that's when I started to get involved in taking kids football. That was that became my thing, my go-to thing, yeah. Which lasted 20 years, so yeah.
But your
boycott and all that, yeah.
Absolutely. No, you know, I tip my hat to anybody who puts time and effort back into youth football in Scotland, so well done, Jim. But just to clarify, your boycott didn't last for 20 years, did it?
No, it lasted until Fergus came in the door and it was time to go back. And then once we went back to Celtic Park, I'd lost my seat. Never got back, so hey-ho.
Never
tried to relocate there ever since. So the relocation thing came out last week. And again, there's no seats in the South Stand, none, which I find quite bizarre. There's always seats for sale dotted about, but there's none for relocation, I understand. So I'm not going to have a rant about that. Move on. Go.
You're no better about it. It's only been 31 years. Colin has broken the news, and let's talk a wee bit more about football because Ian Roy comes in to say, any football news? Well, there is, and Colin is obviously keeping his eye on the breaking news. Colin, let's chat a wee bit then about Benjamin Negren. We said the other day, yesterday in fact, is it one in, one out? Have you got concerns that, I'm really chuffed about this signing. I think it's a great bit of business. I know that the fee, a large part of that is down to the contract of the player. Swedish international, can play left, right, can play through the middle. He's a playmaker. Quinny's had a deep dive into his abilities as well. But you do have that fear that some quality might leave the building if Nicholas Kuhn, if it's to be believed, has this interest from Como now, as well as from Germany, and there was some earlier interest from England. Is it one out, one out for you?
Do you want to try that one again?
It works. It could go in a loop.
Yeah, one in, one out is probably the way it's going to be this summer. Interesting to see earlier on today, I think it was Anthony Joseph, who's been on here before. I had the chance to interview him when I was hosting a podcast on here. He was saying that Como have agreed 2 deals for 2 wingers for 15 million and 12 million respectively, and that should cool their interest in Nicholas Kuhn. So it looks as though it won't be a trip to Lake Como for Kuhn unless he's on the pre-season tour. I'm not surprised that Nicholas Kuhn wanted to move on. If you look at his career path, he's someone who is a bit of a nomad. He doesn't tend to stay at teams for too long. And he's clearly had his head turned, whether that be from his agent or whether that be from elsewhere. He's looking to move on. I'm not saying that he's down tools or anything like that, but he's certainly someone who I don't think his heart is at the club just now. If he was to go, I still think that we would require at least one more winger to come in this window before you look at the other positions that we need to strengthen. And it's quite interesting because we hear this quite a lot from fans who say, right, this team wants £6 million. Celtic, you've got £6 million. Pay that £6 million. And then you either get the player that's brilliant and that's it, and you move on, or you spend £9 million on Adam Ida and people go, well, we shouldn't have spent £9 million on him. We get held over a barrel there. He's only a £6 million player, etc. So it's interesting to see now that Celtic seem to be back in for Balakishwa now that Royal Antwerp have reduced their asking price by about £500,000. So maybe it is smart play from Celtic, and maybe they do deserve a bit of credit in that sense that they could get the best deal for a player that they clearly want. But I think we're just starting to see things warm up now. Obviously, we've got the massive return of Ross Doohan, as Celtic Twitter wanted to let us know the other day. And obviously the smaller return of Kieran Tierney, the Arsenal player. So Negren coming in the door, a great move for me. I think he's very much a 10. He can play wider, but I could see him. It's got flashes of Rogic of him, flashes of Elianusi. And I think he'll be a key threat for us next season. But let that continue, whether it be the likes of Stephen Welsh leaving or anyone else. And I see we turned down a £500,000 bid for Johnny Kenny yesterday, for which I've no idea why, considering he's got 12 months left and they'll want to loan him out. I don't know. But yeah, I think we're starting to see it warm up, and long may it continue. It's a long summer for fans, so we want to see things ticking in the right direction, and you want to see Fabrizio with some positive news, not some player leaving like his Gustav Lagerbielke announcement this morning.
Is that not positive?
Not when he said that the money wasn't going to Celtic at first, but I think he obviously got his wires crossed. I saw him actually tweeting yesterday about a move for a Hibs player. And I'm sitting going, who's Fabrizio got in Scotland? I reckon it's Quinny. I reckon he texts Quinny every day and just goes, Quinny, what's the latest with Scottish transfers? And Quinny gives him a, here we go.
Well, there's quite a few names actually to discuss there, Quinny. We'll come back to Lagerbielke, obviously Greg Taylor and his departure, the rumours surrounding Nicholas Kuhn, but it fresh in the door and hopefully announced and unveiled and all the rest of it to make my tagline obsolete by the end of the day. Benjamin Negren. Ben, what were you calling him? Ben Negren? Is that what you're
I'm going with Ben Negren. It turns into a football chant quite easy as well, you know. Ben Negren, Ben Negren. I just went and pulled up the picture there. He looks pretty chuffed to be here. The hoops look good on him.
Yep.
And our Swedish international, we've got some form with them, you know. So, you know, we got the here we go from my pal, apparently, Big Fab, about a week ago. And I know it's been all quiet on the Western Front, but when he says, and I know it sounds a bit cheesy or whatever, right? But when he does say here we go on a tweet, like that's like his thing, you know. So that's when it is like done. Contracts are signed, end of story, sort of thing. So it's, you know, we've all been kind of waiting for it to come along, I suppose. And similar to what Colin's saying, this is like brilliant, but if it is one in, one out, it kind of takes the shine off it dead quickly. I think, you know, when you look at the team the way it sits now, like I think Leipzig is quite a likely outcome for Nicholas Kuhn on so many levels, and the Como one, if that's not materialising, it's a wee bit whatever. But I hope we keep Kuhn, really, to be honest with you. Like, I hope this is just like I hesitate to admit this, but twice this week I've listened to the Daily Records YouTube channel, and they've been doing some live streams with their journos. And those journos, you know, I'm not big fans of many of them or whatever, but they tend to get info, you know. And they were chatting about some Rangers player, I forget which one, the Igaman, I think. And the chat they were giving, it was essentially like Rangers have told the agent, go forth and hunt, you know, go and find us a deal and then come back and tell us what you find. And I wouldn't be surprised if maybe Kuhn's agent has got the same license to roam, as it were, you know, and it's maybe just knock some doors, see what happens. You know, if we keep Kuhn, this Negren move is unreal for us going into a Champions League qualifier. Like, it's incredible.
See the thing on that, Paul, like when he's saying, it feels so different nowadays. Agents are getting given permission from the clubs to go and speak to other teams. So Negren's agents had the chance to like dash out all the contract details for his move to Celtic long before a fee was agreed, and that's becoming a more common practice. Back in the day, you seen people were fined and struck off for tapping players up and stuff like that. That doesn't seem to be a thing so much anymore. But just to confirm, it is a 5-year contract subject to international clearance. And he has said that he feels amazing to have signed for Celtic. It's so nice to be here. Been looking forward to this so much. I'm a player who wants to create a lot of chances and go towards goal. I'm a link between the defence and the offence, and I run a lot. I'm an offensive-minded player, but I also work hard and try to do my best in all parts of the game. I'm a very competitive person, and this is something that I love about Celtic. It's a huge club, and I love that, and also the winning mentality. I want to be with similar-minded people who also love to win. I had my breakthrough when I was very young, so even though I'm 23 years old, I've played over 200 games. I have a lot of experience. That's what I want to bring to the club.
And he suits that home jersey as well, does Benjamin. I like this move. I'm right behind it. It doesn't feel like, you know, a lot of the time in the past, Quinny, we've bought players for around about that figure and it's a project and it's not. This is the real deal. That's how I'm kind of looking into this one. And there he is. Yes, it's now announced. And Celtic with their beautiful home jersey there. I'm not quite sure where this one's getting photographed. I'm not sure where that is, but it looks as though it's a different location to the one with the away jersey. So maybe we won't see him in the coleslaw top, as I think Colin Watt has christened it. So there we go. Benjamin is in the building. Jim, what's your thoughts on this? Because I'm a bit like Quinny. If we go into this and he's more of a kind of creative number 10 style and we hold on to Kuhn, I'm just thinking, what can I wait for Jota to come back at this stage, you know, because then there's a lot of creativity there.
I agree with Quinny. I'd like to keep Kuhn a bit disappointed and seeing all this stuff. We're all experts in body language and he wants to chuck it and all that kind of stuff. I mean, I just feel as if we won the league last year. I think Kuhn, although Kuhn wasn't the player of the year, I think Kuhn made a significant difference at the start, the first half of the season. Remember the goal to Ross County, I think, late goal. A goal against Kilmarnock. He dug us out of some games, played well in the Champions League, and he was the main reason we got 12, 15 points ahead. You know, once you go 12, 15 points ahead, the games become easier at that point. I know Maeda then scores tons of goals, but I think it's easier to score goals when you're lots of points ahead. So Kuhn did a lot for us last season. He kind of set that standard, I think. I was fortunate enough to be there at the media conference when he was unveiled. First thing I thought, there's not much of him. Really, really lightweight. So whether he's never played that many games in a season. I mean, I'd have thought after half the season, that's not as much as he's played. So I think maybe he's knackered the last half of the season. There was a game against St John's where he pulled out a tackle. Social media goes mad. Get rid of him. I think we overreact. I think he's a really talented player. I'd like to keep him. I think if we're signing players, they have to be first-team starters for me. They're not squad players. You sign first-team starters, and who's there already becomes a squad player. You know, you sign somebody better than Cameron Carter-Vickers, he becomes a squad player then. You sign somebody better than Alistair Johnson, he becomes a squad player then. We sign too many squad players. So, yeah, I mean, without having a moan, but we should have signed these guys in January. Because my big concern this year is having to face these Champions League qualifiers, which we haven't done. in the past few seasons, I'm concerned about the manager's situation, because the longer that goes on, the more uncertainty there's going to be. I'm concerned about the start we have to the season, because we knew this first season of fixtures is going to be difficult because it's our turn for that. So I think, and I'm also concerned about the squad, because the squad isn't as good as it was at the start of last season, where we had Matt O'Reilly was still in the building, Kyogo was still in the building. So without trying to sound too good, doom and gloom, I think by the end of August, we'll certainly have a better idea where we are. If we qualify for the Champions League, if the manager signed a new contract, if we're top of the league after Ibrox, then we'll have a good season. But I think there's a lot of water under the bridge before we get to that point. But in terms of answering the question, yeah, the Swedish guy looks good. He's an international player. I always think that's a bit of a test. If you're signing someone who's an international player, then other people must think he's a good player. They must think he's, in his peer group, he's the best within the country, so you can't really lose from that. And that's good about Engels. Once Engels gets his Belgian cap, you think, well, that's good. Although he cost a lot of money, chances I won't lose it because of that. But it certainly looks an exciting player. I hope he's a first-team starter, that he's not a squad player.
I think, Paul, see, going back to what you were saying about the one-in, one-out situation, Jim's hit the nail on the head there. These players that come in have to be either first-team ready and go in and take that jersey right away, or be battling and be very, very close to taking the jersey off the player that's already there. The way that we finished last season, the cup final, the squad that finished that cup final was completely unacceptable. For a team that's got £70 million in the bank, that was completely unacceptable. Having to play Greg Taylor at centre midfield, you're bringing on Jeffrey Sloop at left back, okay, no offence to him, Johnny Kenny up front, Yang on the wing. That team was dead on its feet because we burned out the other good players that we had. Every single good player we had, we burned them out. They ended up injured. Hatate got injured at Aberdeen. Jota getting injured. Jota wasn't fit when he came in, and we pretty much pushed him into a first-team start because we needed him for Bayern Munich. So these players that come in can't just come in and say, right, I'll maybe be good round about January, February. These players now need to come in and hit the ground running. They need to make an impact from day one, because Jim says, we've got the qualifier coming up. We've got a tough start to the season. We want to be competing on all fronts. So the players that are there that can't do that, they do need to go out the door. So if it's one in, one out, I want one poor player out, one good player in, and just have that squad at whatever level it is, 22, 25. But if they can all battle for a first-team spot, do you know what? Some will be unhappy they're not playing. That's better than players that just say, I'm happy to be here, I'm happy to play whatever I can.
No, absolutely. And, you know, when you think about the point that was made about the games that Kuhn has played, and you look at his career in relation to starts and substitute appearances, until he signs for Celtic, he had never played more than 29 games in a single season. The first, it comes to Celtic, and in that particular season, 23-24, if you combine the games that he plays with Celtic and also for Rapid Vienna, he plays 40 games, followed by 51 games. This is unusual for the player. And yeah, you can burn them out, absolutely. But at the same time, as a Celtic supporter, you look at it and go, well, if you want to play for us, and we want to win every domestic trophy and compete in Europe, and you want to be our first pick, then you're playing 50 games a season. Mm-hmm. And this is the thing. It must be something of a culture shock, Quinny, for a player like Kuhn coming in. And I also would say Engels is in that bracket as well.
Yeah, I think you have to put all the guys that we signed, especially the first team level guys, in this window into that category, because I'm very much of the mind, same as most of the chat, you don't really need to have too much sympathy for these guys. They're well looked after and all the rest of it. But the point where that point of view falls down is you can't rub money on sore muscles and injured tendons and just get back on your feet and go run the next day, so I think that's the benefit of a big part of the benefit of the progression you see in players the longer they're here, because Engels, Kuhn, Trusty, they've all broke through a personal kind of physical barrier this season. And, it's the same as running or any other sport. Once you've kind of broke through a new kind of level or whatever, you then need to go again and push through it. And the first time you do it isn't going to be the most convincing, that you kind of break through that kind of shell, as it were. So I think the dip off that we've seen second half of the season, it's very easy to assume that you don't get it as either a sharp off or, it doesn't happen to as further later on in the season compared to what it did this year. That'll be partly down to having a better squad to help manage all the minutes, but also those guys having done 51 appearances. Rio, I think, got on to 55 or 53 or something.
He'd
He's
nearly
been
played
clocking
every
up.
single game, Connie.
He missed the last two because of that last injury, but if he did, he'd have
that's
played every one of them, you
Yep.
know. And you can see his progression on minutes and appearances over his Celtic career, because it started off being like once a week and come off every 70 minutes or whatever. So, yeah, I think it's very easy to assume that all of them get better next year from what we had them this year. And a big part of that will be how long they impact the season for, as well as how well they impact the season, if that makes sense.
Lots of good comments coming through. Breaking news, obviously. During this particular show, we have a new player in the building. He has been unveiled. And it's Ben Negren, just to Nick Quinney's pronunciation or usage of his name. Giggsy the Poet comes in. Palma is an international player. Yes, he is, Kevin. He is an international player. Is he one you would like to keep, though? That's the difference.
No.
Another international player, an international Swede, is Gustav Lagerbielke. And he's a player that there has been a bit of chat around an offer coming in, and it's €2 million is what's been quoted. Colin, yes, it would mean a loss on the transfer fee that we paid for the player. I would take it. I would take that for the player. It's not going to work out. Brendan Rodgers clearly has made a decision on him. Move him on, free up that space, and as you say, do better next time in the transfer window.
Yeah, definitely. Lagerbielke never really had a chance at Celtic. He's obviously been out. Was that his second loan deal he was out on, or was it his first? I'm not sure.
That was his first, aye.
But £2 million. Do you know what? Just take the money. We move on. You're going to get these transfers where every now and again the success rate's not going to hit. We don't have 100% success rate for transfers, but we get the money in, we reinvest it, and we move on. That money for Lagerbielke covers the cost of the Benjamin Negren deal. That's the way you can look at it. So. Yeah. There's others. Obviously, we've received the fee from Liverpool for Jeremy Frimpong for his move. The last of the UEFA money came in the middle of June. The money is coming into Celtic. There's no concerns in that sense. What we need to do is we need to find that balance between we have this money, go and spend it, and then it's we're cheaping out. The club wants $6 million. Why aren't we paying $6 million? Because we are going to make deals. I would not be surprised this summer if we break our transfer record once again. That's my prediction for this summer window.
What area of the park do you think that would happen in?
I think it'll be in midfield again. Or I wouldn't be surprised if it's a centre-half.
Oh, there we go. We'd need to, as you say, shell a few of them out first. Lagerbielke being one of those names, Mike Nawrocki another, maybe even Stephen Welsh. Kieran, I like to run. Maeda, hold my energy drink, absolutely. And James Devine reminds us that we do have a fashionista on the show today. What does Jim Dior think about the new strip? You have been called Jim Dior a couple of times, Jim. Jim doesn't care, James, about the new strip. Am I right, Jim?
Not one jot. Another 3 words, not one jot. There you go.
There we go. Nice one. And Maestro 95, remember Mialbi scored against England, then ended up at Celtic Park? Yeah, absolutely, he did. And one of the better Swedes, we tried to name the Swedish players that had played for Celtic last week, and we went through, I think most of them, Mastorovic was in there.
Sean Guidetti.
Guidetti, we missed Guidetti actually. That came in on the comments afterwards, Colin. John Guidetti. I really liked him to begin with, but then when he didn't want to sign permanently, he didn't get a game. But he looked good initially. We were talking about David Murray before. Ariel77 says Murray's jealousy about Big Pedro's heated driveway is ripping out of him. Yeah, absolutely. And afternoon, all, says Jay Conley, Jay Larkin, monstrosity of a new strip. I said earlier on, because Colin had mentioned the youth development within Scottish football, we were going to talk about Sean Maloney, but Colin, you have a prior engagement, so we will allow you to go and enjoy the rest of your weekend, my friend.
I'll say one thing quickly about the Sean Maloney thing. Previously, you'd have said it's a jobs for the boys effort, but Sean Maloney has a lot of coaching experience. He's someone who's worked under Roberto Martinez for a long time. He had the Hibs job, obviously, it didn't go too well for him. He is someone who is fairly qualified, probably more qualified than the people that are currently running the B team. So some people would look at it as a jobs for the boys thing, but I think you've got to give him a chance. I would, however, ask that any other roles that we look to fill out, they don't need to be someone that's played for Celtic, especially if Paddy can't remember them playing for them. I think you've got to give him a chance. I would, however, ask that any other roles that we look to fill out, they don't need to be someone that's played for Celtic, especially if Paddy can't remember them playing for them. that made me feel old watching that the other day.
I know. It was the look on his face, Colin. Before I finished my sentence, I thought to myself, Paddy's too young to remember Sean Maloney. Deary me. There's no hope for us, lads. Right, Colin, you have a great weekend, my friend. I'll see you again next week.
Pleasure, gents. Take care.
Top man, as always. There we go.
See this pathway manager job, does it have to be an ex-player? Is it not a kind of admin kind of job at the end of the day? Is it not kind of gathering
It's meant to be like a
information?
mentor thing, I think, isn't it?
Mentor, yeah.
Loading them out. Is that a mentor job?
Well, I know that obviously, for example, Darren O'Day, he was involved even with regards to the negotiations for Daniel Cummins, for example. So even if a player is in the setup and they're looking to do a new deal, the pathway manager will be part of the negotiations for that. So that's one part of the role that I'm aware of. I'm pretty sure we would need to dig a wee bit deeper into Paul Tisdale's presentation to see if anything else was spoken about in relation to that, because I'm looking at what Maloney, and just what Colin says there, what Maloney has achieved in the game post-playing. And you think to yourself, with all that, that's on the grass experience, Quinny. That's stuff where you are mentoring players, but it's, from a coaching perspective. The pathway manager is some of that, I guess, but you're not going to be on the field. You're not going to be on the field and getting in the way of McManus and Johnny Hayes and these guys who are already coaching the youth teams.
You wouldn't think so, but it really does depend on what the job role actually details. But you would expect the player pathway manager, like if you look, this job's kind of started to crop up across England, especially, and throughout these kind of bigger football network groups, clubs, or whatever. For the last couple of years, most people call it a loans manager, or you get the pathway manager kind of stuff as well. And yeah, they're not really associated with being on the training ground. It is much more of like a transfer department appointment, you would kind of say it's kind of categorized as, more than anything. I found it quite odd. I said in the chat when you guys were chatting about it a few days ago, but I would just be worried about, I've got no problem with Maloney doing it on any level, but if he's not going to be in the job at least 3 years, it's an absolute waste of an appointment. This is something that is like a, you're and I hate to bring his name into it, because I don't think it's, that, no one will ever do it, obviously, but this is kind of a step to kind of replacing a wee bit of like what you used to get at the club with, like John Clark, the kit man, Tommy Burns, always been in and around the building, someone that's like there, that's like, that knows everyone, knows their pay, knows everything, and has that kind of connection part with the club and the youth development players. And if Maloney's only going to be in it for a year until Falkirk need a manager, or 3 years until something else happens, or whatever, 2 years, then he's useless as an appointment. You need somebody that's going to be in that role for 3, 5, 10 years, really. And you guys were saying, somebody mentioned somewhere, at least anyway, McGeady was in the running for it. At least McGeady wants to be back office. That's all he's been doing at Ayr United, is back office stuff. He's got no ambitions of anything else. So that's my only concern on it, is that he's not here actually that long in the job.
I think that's part of my point. Is maybe it's just my lack of understanding what a pathway manager actually is. But if there are other pathway managers out there, should we not be going to try and get the best pathway manager we can get? That to me seems a sensible thing to do. And from what Quinny says there, Sean Maloney sounds too overqualified for me, if my understanding what the pathway manager's job is. And that's why I posed the question, is it not a kind of admin kind of job? You gather information on the players, without trying to sound too much like Alan Morrison here, you gather information on the clubs, you loan them, you monitor progress, you communicate to all parties, you assess results, rinse and repeat. I mean, that sounds to me like, Quinny said back office, that sounds like an admin. You don't have to be, if my understanding is, or my lack of understanding isn't correct, is that not a kind of admin kind of job?
If we got him in, we were talking about boot room yesterday, Jim, if we got him in because maybe we have aspirations for him at some point in the future, and I don't mean as first team coach, but somewhere else within the football club. He's available.
But that again is square pegs, round holes. Here's a job for a pathway manager. Who's the best pathway manager out there down south in Europe? That's the guy to get, because he's the guy that knows the job. Don't bring somebody in who doesn't know the job, who's got no experience in the job, who's too qualified. As Quinny said, first opportunity of a managerial job because he's qualified to do that, he's away. I don't understand the job, but if my understanding of what I think it is, I don't understand then why you would bring in a Sean Maloney.
Well, you're right, because the first pathway manager had never been a pathway manager. Darren O'Day had never had that role. And now the second, the replacement, has never been in that role. So I totally get it. I totally get it. But again, it would be interesting to know that, you know, a wee bit of the detail of that particular job role, because we know some of it, very small parts of it, but day to day, what does Sean Maloney do moving forward? Does he look at all these young kids that we send out to other clubs next season with regards to our partnership with Queen's Park and Mira Waka? Is he managing that side of things as well? I would guess so. I would think that would be part of his role.
I think a big part of it is also going to be retention, because we've seen the amount of players that we've seen leave the academy, and it's because we've all got this semblance of like Celtic don't really have a connection with these guys. You know, they're just signing contracts and flying off to Germany, and we kind of find out about it the 11th hour. It feels like, anyway, from, you know, just listening and reading stuff and whatever. So I think it's like Jim says, it's about knowing the players, knowing where they're going on loan, and like it's like a network-based job. So like knowing, for example, like, oh, this manager in whatever club, he plays as midfielders like this, and oh, we've got a midfielder that would be brilliant for his development to get under a manager like that and work in that type of system. Pick up the phone, you need a midfielder, we've got one, that kind of vibe. But also the guys that are coming up, you know, you've got someone who's also managing them, helping them sign their contracts, helping them with any loans and moving up the age groups or whatever. So then when the bigger interest does come, like you've got more of that connection to them. It's not just the coach, but it's like somebody from the club that's like, as I say, I don't want to really bring their names into it, but, you know, the legends that we've had at the club previously that have had a big kind of intangible effort involved in all this, you know, that you're basically looking to bring that back with this type of appointment.
Yeah, I mean, the one guy that I think is Tommy Burns. The one figure that I think of, and you hear all these players that have gone on, not always at Celtic, to have football careers, they always talk about the influence of Tommy Burns in their development, and not just as a coach, you know, but as that person, that link, if you like, the glue within the academy. Sorry, Jim, I cut you off there.
No, I just think the job is about managing people, managing information, managing systems, and just to me, I don't understand why it has to be an ex-player that does that, an ex-Celtic player, an ex-any player, because you're not, as Quinny said, you're not on the grass. You're analysing things. You're trying to come up with ways of maximising the potential of players by moving them somewhere and then monitoring that information and then feeding that back to whoever you feed that back to. And then, as I said, rinse and repeat. So anyway, I'm a bit confused as to what the job is. So maybe that's the issue.
You would expect data analysis to be a massive part of that, you know, performance data as well, so that they can then have programs for each individual player, and be that performance, conditioning, diet, that whole thing. Yeah, you would expect that to be part of it. I'm pretty sure we'll find out more as we move ahead. It's been quite an interesting last hour. We spoke about David Murray blaming Peter Lawwell. That was good. Will he fight back? Probably not, but it'll be interesting if he does. What did you make of the new third kit, Jim Orr? Your reaction was priceless. And also, we have welcomed to the football club Benjamin Negren. Does that mean the departure for Nicholas Kuhn? Let's hope not. Let us know in the comment section if you want to come along tonight. It is a sellout. Brian McClare and Peter Grant cannot wait. Doors open at 6:30. So come along, enjoy it if you've got a ticket. If not, make sure you buy a ticket for the next gig, which will be announced very, very soon indeed. Thanks everybody for getting involved, and thank you once again, Quinny and Jim Orr, and also Colin Watt, for joining me on A Celtic State of Mind.